Welcome, welcome to this class on life transitions, staying healthy, and so much more. Today, I am joined with my friend and grief specialist, Vicki Hagadorn. Vicki comes to us from Austin, Texas area. If we've never met before, I'm Dr. Mary Starr Carter. I'm known as the Total Wellness Doc and Mom, and for over 25 years, I've been helping families find natural solutions to total wellness. And total wellness, not just being our physical health, but our emotional health, our spiritual health, body, mind, and soul. So it's a real privilege to have Vicki here today and to give you just a short class on some tools and tips that really can elevate your own healing process. If you're a wellness practitioner, if you're a brand partner with us, you will really have something today that can help you, but also help the clients and the people around you as well. Awesome. All right. So, Vicki, let's give them a little story of how we met and how we together on all of this. Now, I had known of you, like my history, again, I went to school to be a chiropractor. And while in chiropractic school, I fell into natural wellness, usually Young Living essential oils, absolutely love them. Mentoring with Dr. Gary Young, who taught me so much about how the mind and body and spiritual health were all connected to dis-ease, right? To dis-ease. So I spent the first 10 years like really pouring into my career and I got really out of balance. And that's when I went to a training that I know you know very well called First Steps to Success. And I think that's when I first saw you and your amazing husband, Dan, and started to learn of all the things that you did, and then unfortunately had another 10 years of my life with a lot of life transitions that I'll talk about in a second, and really came to a place where I had a mentor pour into me how I I needed, I don't want to say help, but I needed guidance. I needed to get through some of the things that I had been through, and that holding on to those things was actually suppressing me in life and in business and relationships. And I she told me that on a Saturday, and I think I that day I messaged you. I'm like, you know what? I've been talking about grief recovery, but I've never jumped in. And I found a book of one of our mutual friends, Isa. I had her on talking about grief recovery and all the amazing things that you had done for her, your work had done. And then I said, okay, it's time. It's time. So, talk a little bit about your history, and then we'll get a little bit into life transitions and all the health stuff.
Oh, it's beautiful. I love being here. Thank you for inviting me on. And I love the opportunity to share. I think that what we do is so symbiotic, and I couldn't agree more with everything that you're sharing. Understanding the connection of emotional health and how that connects to our physical health, our weight, all of those areas. So I came to grief recovery. It's been 20 in 2003. So 21 years. And I think so. I came when I was going through, my parents were getting divorced, and I was married and I didn't live at home. But this really wrecked me when my parents were getting divorced. We were a very tight knit family. I have a sister, and the four of us were very codependently tight knit. There was a lot of codependence and enabling and addiction and recovery and all of those things. I was actually in recovery. I had been sober for 10 years when this happened. And I was going through this loss. And a good friend of mine said, I think grief recovery could help you. I was really sick. I got adult onset asthma at that time, because I've since then learned that your body will literally manifest when you are holding things in and you don't know how to process them. And I remember saying to her, I don't need grief recovery. I actually said, my husband really needs that. He's been through a lot of loss. I haven't really been through a lot of loss. because I didn't really understand what grief was and what loss was. I hadn't experienced a lot of death, but I had experienced a lot. And when I went to the first kind of info meeting to learn more, I was like, oh, fine, I'll go and I'll learn more. And the first thing that I heard was that unresolved grief is conflicting feelings caused by the end of a familiar pattern of behavior. And that was one of those, like, I remember writing that down and just sort of like sitting back, and it opened my mind to realizing this is so much more than the death of, like, the loss of someone through death. And obviously, divorce is a big one as well. But when something ends, like you mentioned a little bit of transitions in life. We go through, my daughter's in college right now, and, and it's been a huge transition for all of us. And so there's all these transitions that we go through that create conflicting feelings in us, and we don't even know what that is, that it's grief. That's grief. And when I understood that and I thought, wow, I've probably been grieving my whole adult life. I've been in therapy since I was 18 and going through different, like I said, my own recovery. I had an eating disorder all through my 20s, and I was in extensive therapy, and it helped me. I think it helped me to not completely self-destruct. But when I was sitting there with my parents getting divorced, I thought, I'm not going to use alcohol. I'm not going to go to the things I've gone to. I've got enough recovery under my belt. But I realized I do not have the tools to process this. And I signed up. I was like, okay, I felt like this is the time, and it was so profound what I experienced in a short amount of time. I knew this was different than any therapy that I had done, and it helped me connect to my emotional truth, that I could feel present in the moment. And I finally, after all the years, started to understand boundaries, because if you're triggered by something, you can't have a boundary because you're in survival mode emotionally, fight, flight, freeze, all of those things, right? And when I went through and started healing the foundational relationships where those things were planted, the seeds were planted, and then the roots grew. You can't change a behavior, and the behavior is not the issue. It's changing and healing down on the foundation. And then I was able to be present in the moment. And I remember seeing the change in my marriage and the change in our communication, where it didn't take me days to get connected to what I was feeling. And I have a very patient husband, and he would, try to pull things out of me. And all of a sudden I went, oh my gosh, I am aware of what I'm feeling in the moment. And I'm actually able to express, and I'm able to that was monumental for me. And that's when I said, this changed so much for me. Where do I sign up? How do I become a specialist? Because I have such a heart for seeing people live in freedom, and in that freedom of here, self-sabotaging behaviors, whatever those are. It can be food, it can be alcohol, it can be relationships. And there's so much to talk about, but that's kind of in a nutshell my story of finding it, and then the process of doing the work. And I love that I get to live in the work per se, and I get to work because it's always on the forefront, and I use my grief recovery tools all the time, all the time. Very helpful.
Yeah, what's been amazing through these years too is, I work with hundreds of brand partners in Young Living essential oils, and to see particularly, I mean, I can think of three women right now, like who have been set free from
Mm.
maybe trauma they've had, the loss of a parent, just the breakthrough in them, in their careers, because that's what I get to see the most, or just they weren't the best people before, like to hang out with, and then
Oh,
like
wow.
now just to see that. I don't want to say any names, uh, but that's just been so amazing. So let's go back up to life transitions, because I'm gonna try not to cry, but
Mm.
I just think about, I mean, even in my own practice lately, working with women who've had cancer and have had to have full breast implants, they're and this was maybe years ago, but I mean, what a transition, right? To lose a piece of your body or your uterus. I just had another client lose her uterus. Transitions like myself. I mean, I've had 5 moves in 11 years. And I remember being in one of the first moves. I had a 6 month old and a 3 month old or a 3 year old. And we we stopped at one location. My friend had a class, a yoga class. I went and did it with her. And I remember feeling so exhausted afterwards, right? Because I had to be kind of more present in my body, had to think about that. And then I get to our move, we finish our move, we're there, and my body just totally, went into like a dis-ease state. And I have never, I never allowed myself time in all the moves really to process the end of one thing in the beginning of the other. And a couple of weeks ago, we were driving down and I was thinking about my California friends and how much I missed them and loved them. And I was like, all this emotion came up in me. And I'm like, oh, I don't think I've ever processed that
Mm.
loss, right? So transitions in loss, do they go hand in hand? That's my question for you.
Yeah, I really think that they do. I think that, sometimes we probably wouldn't think of it as a loss per se, but it is definitely a loss. It's when a pattern of behavior ends, and moving is a big one. Everything changes. When you move, you have to find new doctors, new hairdressers, new stores, new pharmacy, new like school, new everything is different. And I think that we live in such a culture that is go, go, go. And we're actually applauded for, how much we keep going. And we're taught in this life so much about how to acquire things. And there's nothing really taught on what to do when we lose them. And I think that that's so like it's important. I wish we could teach this in schools. I wish we could teach this. And what I love too about what I get to do is working with adults. I work with adults, not with children, but I love because it's by changing how a parent or us adults process something, it's also going to change how they teach their kids because
Mhm.
we learn how to process grief and loss from our parents. And one of the first things that we talk about when we meet for grief recovery is how was processing emotions modeled for you in your home growing up? How was that modeled? If you grew up in a household of addiction, alcoholism, mental health. Maybe there was a parent that had mental health issues. Maybe there was a parent that worked all the time, absent. Maybe there was a common, like, a lot of times parents don't know what to do with emotions. So they'll say things like, if you're going to cry, I'll give you something to cry about. If you're going to
Mhm.
cry, go to your room.
Mhm.
There's all these ways that we learn through osmosis, through our experiences, that our emotions are not allowed. They're not safe. I recently worked with a young girl who she shared the only safe emotion in my house growing up was anger. Everyone yelled. My parents yelled, and we could yell, but we couldn't cry. Excuse me.
Wow.
And it
Wow.
was so interesting to think, wow, like how that sat with her. She was in her 20s, and trying to navigate through a divorce that her parents were going through. And it was amazing for her to go, wow. So that's how she reacts in life with a
Yeah.
lot of anger. And anger keeps her empowered. It keeps her, that's been a coping. That's what was modeled. But it's so interesting when you look at, okay, what was modeled? Because we want to model for our kids safe communication. We want to model that their emotions are real, they're valid. And it's not, it's to help them process through it, for them to
Mhm.
be heard, for us to realize our emotions need to be heard and
I
how we can process that.
So I want to back up a little bit into the physical, emotional connections of what I know through my years and my education and that too is when we go through a life transition, maybe your spouse has come home after 40 years of working, right? And and it's a whole new experience, and maybe you have a lot of, anxiety about it. Maybe all your kids are gone or empty nesters, or you're having one of your kids getting married. Like transition, life transition can be so much, a change of a job, a career change, a new, my husband just got a new position in his work, and there's emotion with that too. So last week, and maybe I'll share, or last month, we did a really good, um, let's see, that's not it. Here we go. We did a really good presentation on emotions. Okay, so on emotions, and I'll give you the link to that in a second.
Okay.
So, what life transitions have you been through? Okay. And maybe you could put in the chat. Maybe it was a loss of a parent, a sudden loss of a parent. Maybe you're in a season now where you're caregiving for your parents, right? You're caregiving for your parents. Um, ha- and you think about, I remember in my practice, um, go back here. I remember in my practice having my first experience of understanding this, where one of my clients, she was a caregiver for her dad as he, over about a period of 2 years before he passed. And she poured everything in it. She had a very servant heart. She poured everything in it. At the end of that, she ended up with type 2 diabetes.
Oh, wow.
And I remember thinking, this is not a coincidence, right? And as I would learn and be mentored and be educated, so as when the body is under stress, we're hearing all about that online, right? Cortisol levels being
Yeah.
very high, adrenal fatigue, all of these things, mineral imbalances, hormone imbalances, all of these things can happen when we go through life's transitions. And my own, where I ended up in disease just from doing an extra yoga class for the first time,
Yeah.
is my body was so stressed that that extra amount, and this happens too. We work with a program called Rev Up, a weight loss program, and sometimes women or men who haven't exercised in a long time, they're like, "Yes, I'm going to go out for 30 minutes." And they go out for 30 minutes and they can't get off the couch for 5 days because their body had been in such a high stress cortisol level, this that extra what should have been healthy for them, their body can't handle. So when we go through life's transition, number one, it's important to recognize the season we're in, but also what's your physical health, right? What is your physical health like? And I will give you another example. In 2018, my husband fell off a cliff on his bicycle and was in Stanford Hospital for 21 days, and then at home in a hospital bed for another month. That was very traumatic. I had two little kids at home. I had to be fully present in that moment. And I really, in those months, because I couldn't think about anything but getting my husband healthier. But I went into it 50 pounds overweight.
Oh,
So
wow.
I was not healthy. I'm probably maybe 35, 40 pounds, ended up 50 pounds overweight, but I was not super healthy going into that. So 6 months after that, when he's better, he's off to work, he's doing great, I am totally depleted in other dis-ease state, right? Now go to 2021. I've released 50 pounds. I'm doing what we now know as the Rev Up weight loss program. I'm adding good nutrition every day. I'm exercising. I've got healthy things I do for stress instead of eating, right? Or binging, watching things. Like I have tools now, and
Right.
my mother-in-law and my sister end up in the hospital. My sister for another 3 months. I end up being her nurse maid, basically, having her in my home. Like I was able to be a better caretaker for her at that season because I took care of myself first. And
Yeah.
every day that I took care of her, I took care of myself first because I exercised every morning. I drank my Ninja Red, which we'll talk about in a second. Like I took care and filled up my cup first. And if anything, I could share with you is we never know when a life transition is going to happen, friends. We never know,
Right.
and sadly, I'm over, we'll be 50 in a few days, really. I see that kind of the older we are, the more life transitions do happen. And
Right.
it is so important. It's never too late not to get healthy. It's never too late not to get healthy. So I encourage you, maybe you're in a season where you have little kids and a spouse who works out of the house, maybe many days a week or doesn't come home till 7. Well, I'll tell you about my client, Cindy Morbido. She made a point. She went walking as soon as her husband came home. The kids had been fed, his job, and she went walking. She went to the YMCA every day, and it kept her sane. She filled up her cup. Maybe for you, you sadly are taking care of someone with cancer. You need to fill up your cup. You cannot not do it, friends. You cannot not do it. So let's go back and talk about a little bit about, yes, the importance of health, the importance of nutrition in your seasons of life. If we think about it like you're growing a plant. Okay. Imagine yourself, you're growing a plant and you water, 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 and you put sun, but you have no fertilizer, right? Is that going to be as healthy a plant as someone with a good organic fertilizer, right? And this is why we love in this program called the Rev Up Weight Loss Program, but anyone can invest and make the investment in foundational nutrition. I've been working with the Ninja Red. It's an antioxidant juice. It's full of amino acids. It's whole foods, minerals, vitamins. It's been researched to lower inflammation levels, to help you manage your weight. It helps with sleep, and it also helps to manage those stress hormones. Okay, all of those things. I've been working with this since 2007. And I cannot tell you the difference of my friends, my wellness advocates, my clients who are on Ninja Red on a daily basis versus those who aren't, because they recognize they get better sleep, they feel better. So, whatever you can do to build that foundational nutrition. We
Mm.
also have a program called the Rev Up. We call it the weight loss program, but it's really a lifestyle program. Any of you who've been in there or any of our coaches, please comment below like what it's done for you. One, it's given people community. We are a group of like-minded individuals who want to be healthier. We want to be healthier in our 40s or 50s or 60s or 70s. We have 80-year-old friends in that who have released a lot of weight. Like my friend Emily from Crestview, Florida, she's released over 70 pounds. She was a caretaker for her husband and for her mother-in-law, I believe her mother or father-in-law. And she was just in a very unhappy, she was unhappy with herself, but releasing the weight, being a part of the Rev Up weight loss program has given her purpose. She wants to share with others and let them know it's never too late to be healthy. I know Becky is on here. Becky didn't need to lose weight. She needed to learn to eat healthy, to fill up her nutrition, and the difference in she says her mental health, her physical health, she just feels so much better. So the Rev Up Weight Loss Program gives you community, it gives you friends, it gives you accountability. It gives you step by step how to eat, what portion size, what to eat, all of those things that can help you not only lose weight, but feel like $1 million. To feel like $1 million. And over we hear that. And that's why I'm such an advocate for it, Vicki, is because the women who go through this or the coaches, they they can handle life so much better. I see Teresa Yeager. Can I bring it? Nod yes if I can bring you up and share. I know Teresa, you're in a season. Okay, I'm gonna bring Teresa up to share. She's in a season of life that's very challenging. She has a profoundly autistic son, and a lot on your plate. a lot on your plate. Share a little bit with us about
Um,
Rev.
so it's exactly like you had pointed out that, um, until you realize that you actually have to take care of yourself first before you have anything left to give anybody else. I mean, we think as moms that, we're always going to have
Can I get a
all the
stretcher
energy and
to hold
everything
Y and call
for,
you, please? EBS for the stretcher to hold Y and call you, please.
we always think that we're going to have unlimited energy and patience for our kids. As parents and especially as moms, we think we're supposed to just be able to stand up and do it day after day after day. But the reality is that eventually, you run out and you don't have the energy anymore. And I found that like with Rev Up, it's forcing me to intentionally take care of myself and keep myself in shape and which comes with my mental is better. Like I can look at my son and I can understand what he's saying so much easier because I can be more present and more aware and more patient because I feel good and I'm not battling my own pain and my own exhaustion and my own crap, basically. So yeah.
That's
That's what I got
awesome.
out of Rev Up. It's awesome.
Thank you so much, Teresa. Appreciate you. Appreciate you.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, friends. Let's share here again and look at uh what else. So this is last month's emotional wellness replay because we have other tools too for to fill up your cup. We have a huge line of essential oils that are specific for emotional wellness. Last month, if you look at this QR code, you can get a replay of that, just really how to use essential oils, use your nutrition to support your emotional wellness. So all of that's there. And we have more things too. Vicki, you talked a little bit about grief. Can you repeat that
Are you
definition
just a visitor?
of what
I
grief
am a
is?
visitor
Okay,
in the
all right.
emergency room.
Okay, I just want to
Um,
make sure.
Okay.
We got somebody here. Okay, so if you could give us the definition of grief again, and then what does it mean to be emotionally complete?
Yes, very great question. So there's two definitions of grief. One that I've shared already, which is unresolved grief is conflicting feelings caused by the end of a familiar pattern of behavior. And I think that it's also important to recognize that we say unresolved because grief is a universal, it's part of our humanity, it's part of our experience as a human on this planet, on this side of heaven. So we are going to experience loss and we're going to experience these transitions. So when we have unresolved grief is what we talk about those conflicting feelings. Another definition is also unresolved grief is undelivered communication of an emotional nature.
Mm,
So have you ever found yourself in a situation where you have to have a kind of a confrontive talk with someone? You have feelings about it and you have to talk to them about it. And it creates energy in your body. You can feel it. You can feel it in your chest, in your stomach. You feel maybe a pit in your stomach. Oh, you dread the conversation. Maybe you're driving by yourself and you have the conversation in the car where if they say this, I'm going to say that. And that is what we call undelivered communication. And when we carry that, have you ever also had the conversation and like maybe before you couldn't eat, you felt sick, and then after the conversation happens and you've gotten to say what you needed to say, all of a sudden you're like, I'm starving. I could eat everything. Like there's this thing, like it literally is energy in our body. And so when we say what is emotional completion, we talk about that a lot. There's a difference between having closure and getting emotionally complete with something. So you can't always get closure. That's a whole, that's something that we want to have closure on things or we want to, but what we talk about is having emotional completion. And that's such a great question. And I'm so happy that you asked me that because it's really the foundation, I think, of grief recovery. Because what we do is we learn to connect to our emotional truth about something, whether it's our past, whether it's our trauma, loss, these things, how did that affect us? Because we've lived our whole life in survival mode in that sense, not feeling that. We keep going. And we've learned it's not safe to really express our emotions. So, in order to fit in order to not be judged, in order to not be fixed or told what to do, we've just kind of figured out how to survive emotionally. And so, if we don't, first of all, connect to our emotional truth and then have a structured way to process that, a safe place to express it, because it's got to be expressed. I always say that what we do in grief recovery is a right and left brain exercise. It's a left brain exercise to recall and to write and to do that work. And then the right brain is when you're sharing it with a live human being that's safe and nurturing. And that is what brings an integration, and that is what brings a healing when you get heard. So if unresolved grief is undelivered communication of an emotional nature, then being able to connect to your emotional truth, having a safe place to say it, and being able to express it is part of the process of recovery. And on the other side, I always say, like, when you do this process, what you do is you develop a new emotional relationship with yourself first, because you're going to start living a life with permission to feel and with the tools to process those feelings. It's almost like there's a self-parenting part of this. It's like you're able to show up and be who you need for yourself. And that helps you to be present for everyone in your life. It literally will seep into every relationship that you have.
Wow. Wow. I love that. I
Does
love
that
that.
make sense? Do you feel like that was a
That's really, really good. Now we have another gift, right? For
yes?
everyone. Yes. So, there's no way that we could cover all of this topic and all the things, but navigating life's transitions, free webinar you and your husband Dan did. Dan is also a grief recovery specialist. He is gifted in so many ways here, but this was a great webinar, and we're giving that free to our participants who registered and our listeners. But you can go right here to freedomfromgrief.com webinar and get added to get that ASAP. And
Yeah, and we do a webinar every month with a different theme. And so that is our link right now. That webinar is on that link.
oh,
But if
great.
you want to, what I can also do, so right now,
Mhm.
if you go to that link, you will get access to that webinar. That was the one we did last month. And it's such a great overview, I think, because we go through transitions. Our next one will be on holidays, on kind of how do we emotionally survive the holidays, the connection of grief and holidays. That's going to be on December 11th. So once we switch it up, then that link will take you to the new webinar. So if you want, what I can also do is send you the link to the YouTube. You can
Mm,
find our YouTube channel, which is inspiredlife.com, or on YouTube, we're Inspired Life, and
mhm.
all of our webinars live there. But I can also send you, Mary, the direct webinar YouTube link that you can
Oh,
also send out if you want to give people.
okay,
But
great.
for the next couple of weeks, if you go to that link, you will get access to our replay for that
Awesome.
webinar.
Awesome. Awesome. That is great. That is great. So we really have right now, as we kind of wrap up and we move into kind of the other portion of this talk, is we have three choices. You know, people watching our little class here today, they kind of fall into three categories, and we kind of call it good, better, and best, right? So some of you are like, oh, this is intrigued me. You know, this, I never thought about grief, or I never thought about how it affects me. So the best thing you can do, you know, really, that's it costs you nothing, is get registered for and get that a copy of that webinar.
Yeah.
Really, you know, there's no strings attached. It's a gift to you. That's the good option. A better option is, okay, I am going to make myself a priority. I'm going to prioritize myself financially too. because good health and good nutrition need that. And just an FYI, a lot of people say, well, I eat really healthy. Well, friends, unfortunately, if you're over the age of 35, you do not have the digestive enzymes anymore to get all the good nutrition. So one little packet of this Ninja Red, you would have to literally eat 8 oranges, 2 cups of blueberries. Like you would need so much nutrition to get the same antioxidant equivalents, not let alone the amino acids, the minerals, all of that stuff too. So this is a better option too, is to get the webinar, get set up with Ninja Red, and you can get back to the person who invited you to get a link to get started with that. And then the best option is, do it all. Do it
Yeah.
all and get signed up for getting your Ninja Red, get into our next Rev Up. Brand new clients, it costs $47, a one-time fee to get started in there. You could be like my friend, Dr. Heather. She was down 16.9 pounds. This is her third Rev Up. So we do it 10 days every month. Her third Rev Up, and I think like 20 inches. She's down a lot, and that's 10 days. So that's 30 days total. So congratulations to her as well. And then check out Vicky's grief recovery program. I invested in it and it was such a good tool for me in that season. And maybe you're in a different season than I am, but it's really such a beautiful tool. All right, so we want you to get back to the person again who invited you here. Let them know, hey, what did you like best about what you heard today? What did you like best about what you heard today? And where do you see yourself getting started? Or good, better, or best? But if you want to hang out, we've got some more announcements. Those who just finished our Rev Up program, again, I was sharing with you Emily's story earlier. She, again, was a caretaker. Look at that, 77 pounds, 38 inches, 17 rounds. I'm going to share with you a little bit of our Rev Up winners. How many of you love success stories here? In November, we had 9 people participate. They lost 29.8 pounds, 11.25 inches from 7 people who reported. That's a total, friends, since we started in March 2023, 2,336 pounds released, over 1,200 inches. Holy moly. Wow. That is so awesome. So what do we've got going on from the coaches, the Rev Up coaches? We got Happy Healthy Holidays Challenge. You deserve to be healthy, happy, and fit to finish 2024. No matter how busy you are, we can make it work. Join today for tips and a guided plan. This sounds really wonderful, along with Vicky's December webinar. That sounds like a good fit, those two things. And you can go there at wendyclayton.net /page Healthy Holidays 2024. That's a great option too. Coach Wendy is also our total transformation journey coach, one of our coaches. She does 6-month-long programs for those of you who need really like good accountability, step by step, and we've had such good results. Her clients have had such good results working with her for those 6 months accountability, and it's like the next step of the Rev Up program, because we're only with you for 10 days and we don't do half, not even a quarter of what you do in the total lifestyle transformation program. You two need to meet. You are both in the Texas area and not too far from each other, Vicki. So I think
That would be great.
yeah, I could see you guys doing something together. Transform your smoothie game. How many of you love smoothies? We
Oh,
have
yeah.
Coach Jen has her recipes and ebooks available. I think I saw one of our clients really enjoying some of the different recipes she had in there. Those of you just Young Living products too, she shares in there all different things that you can have with Young Living products too. And also, I always offer, well, actually, I think my December is full now, but starting in January, I have 60-day wellness coaching that I offer available. And then online, you can find at www.starhealth.com our Zytoscan and assessments. Those are really neat to kind of put a few pieces of the puzzle, and you can get those done anytime. It takes up to 5 days to get the results back to you, but that is a neat way to kind of assess where you're at and if there's anything else your body is asking for at that moment in time. All right, who likes prizes? We have some winners of our Rev Up program from last month. Let's see who they are. All right, our testimonial prize. Oh, Dr. Heather, yay! Congratulations to her. She got a $35 YL credit on her account. Good job, Dr. Heather. She's in the Seattle area. If you need a good chiropractor, she's awesome.
Nice.
Yep. And our daily check-in. So this is really a key to your success. We find, I think it's about a 40% greater success rate for those who check in daily in the Rev Up program. Bonnie Wilson, congratulations to Bonnie. I know you had great success as well, $35 wild count credit as well. And now we'll open it up to any questions, anyone who's out there, or any comments, or any of our coaches want to make any comments or anything here. You can write your question in the chat or just raise your hand. All right, I see a question I think that maybe someone has to. Is Becky or sorry. Okay. There's a few of you on there. So anyway, so one of the questions I have is when we are in a very stressful time in our life, a lot of times we don't feel like we can make the time to do something like this. What would you say to someone who's going through, like, they've got a lot on their plate, maybe they've just lost a loved one? When is it too early to start grief recovery?
That is a great question. And I have a thing I say, it's never too soon and it's never too late. And I think that, what people find a lot of times, and what we've talked about, how unresolved grief is undelivered communication, just in the process of being able to talk, being able to just process. A lot of times when we're talking to family or friends, they're going to give you what I call unsolicited advice.
Mm.
And that is when you start to share something, people automatically, because they want to help you and it's well-meaning, but there's a lot of things that get said because most of us process our emotions through our intellect, through our mind. And so we come up with those things, like if there is a loss, let's say there was a loss, then those words that get said, like, well, they're in a better place, or they're not suffering anymore. And all of those things are intellectually true. There's intellectual truth, but what it does is it's shutting down the person who's feeling, because the underlying message is you shouldn't be feeling the way you're feeling because you're looking at the positive, or you're trying to spin that. And what happens is it just makes the person grieving feel bad about feeling bad. And they recognize right away that this isn't safe. I can't talk about this. And so when we start to give advice on what you should do or how you should handle it, what happens is that person who's grieving just shuts down. And so right away, when they are able to go into a process like grief recovery, they get to get heard. They're in a place that's safe, that they can process. It's one of the commitments that we make each week is there's no unsolicited advice here. We're here to help you. I want to pull out everything that you're feeling. And so I think the way that it's designed, being one-on-one, is it's very much, it's like this. It's like you and I on this call right here, and we're able to connect and talk. And the book that we go through, which is the Grief Recovery Handbook, this is, we start off right away by looking at the myths that we've learned about loss, like time heals is a big myth, big myth. time does nothing, it would be like the equivalent of breaking your arm and just kind of waiting for your arm to get fixed. You have to take action, you have to do something. So there's an action, it's an action program, what we do. And I think that right away, even after just the first session, people feel a peace. Also, there's a peace in knowing I'm processing this. Like this is positive. There might be emotion, you might be crying, but it's actually good. It's recognizing that our emotional responses to grief, loss, and trauma are normal. It's normal to be sad. It's normal to be mad. And it's definitely normal to have tears. And so I think that even if it is very fresh, to be able to have a place to go that processes it, I say it's never too soon.
And even if someone lost their mother maybe 30 or 40 years ago, it would, I mean, you can still process so
Oh,
much there.
yes.
Okay, I love that.
Yes. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I wanted to, you said something else uh that was unsolicited advice. Yeah, that is so true. Oh, Christians. Okay, I'm a Christian. You are an amazing Christian. Um, a lot of times we are, you've got to just be in your Bible more. And I have a good friend who I love and stuff too. But if I share something, it's always, and it's not that she's not that there isn't truth in there,
For sure.
but I think there is a mindset that I don't need anything outside of my Bible. Like I don't need therapy or grief recovery or so. How would you address that? That mindset, I guess.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of like when people say, God doesn't give you more than you can handle.
Mm.
Not true. It's not scripturally sound. It doesn't say that anywhere in the Bible. Anywhere.
Mm.
In fact, everything that we experience in life, if you really think about it, if you're a Christian and you're walking with God, you realize that everything that we experience, especially hard things, we can't do on our own strength. We struggle so much in our culture of being self-reliant. And so that just perpetrates this. Well, God doesn't give you more than you can handle. When you're in a really hard place and your emotions are everywhere and you feel conflicted and you're grieving something and someone says that to you, the response in your heart is like, well, God, you've done it. It's more than I can handle. Or, well, it's either it's not helpful and it's going to create distance because who can understand that? But it's not in the Bible. It's not scriptural. And a lot of times I think that that's a really good thing. A lot of times people use religion or they use the Bible like anything else, like keep busy, get a hobby, pour into someone. Even I remember the church I used to go to, study the Bible with people, be outer focused. You're just inner focused. You're just focusing on yourself. And like you just said, you can't go through life giving to everyone else and not healing here first. And I do believe that, everything we have is in Christ and in the Bible in the sense of that. But to think that if I read a scripture or I read the Bible, that it's going to help heal the pain that I'm in, there's a disconnect to that. I think that everything that we do, it's funny because I was a Christian for 10 years when I went through grief recovery. And I was very involved, very involved in my church. And I became a Christian at 28. So I didn't grow up at all with going to church. So it was like drinking from a fire hose for me. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And when I went through this process of grief recovery, every week we make commitments that we're going to be totally honest. We're not going to judge, compare, or minimize. And that's just kind of like the first line of defense that we have to building our what do you call it, our coping mechanisms. I'm going to minimize, I'm going to judge, I'm going to compare. Well, it's not that bad. It's not as bad as dot dot dot. I should be beyond this. This shouldn't be taking me down. Why is this taking me out? I need to, you know i'm I'm how old I am. I'm a mom. I'm stronger than this. Like there's all these ways, but when we compare, minimize, or judge our emotions, we're pushing it down and those emotions accumulate. Losses happen in our life, and all of this accumulates to the point where we implode or we explode, we get sick like you said, or we do something healthy for us and our body completely falls apart because we aren't able to handle. So I think that that's a really good question. And I can tell you that at 10 years being a Christian, when I went through this process, I understood God's heart so much better because I was like, that's actually the heart of God. He doesn't judge, he doesn't compare, he doesn't, there, it's safe. That's who he is. We don't always experience it that way. And when we have losses and hurts, we don't understand that God. Why does God let bad things happen to good people? Why do all these things happen? Those are things we have to wrestle with. And I believe that the process helps us heal and it changes our perception, it changes our ability to give, receive. It's in the healing. So I think that it's a very important it's important that we don't answer our heart with intellect and that we allow the emotions and and really even give that voice. Like, tell me more about that is a great question
Yeah.
to ask somebody when they're hurting. Like, tell me more about that. It's a great thing to help people give them space when you show up to someone who's hurting and you listen and you don't start giving them answers. It's not it takes a lot of pressure off. First of all, I don't have to fix this. I'm not here to fix this. They don't want to be fixed. But when you give someone that permission by saying, I remember there was someone that I didn't know that well, and they had just gone through a big loss. And I said, it was her mom. And I remember just saying, tell me about your mom. And I wasn't trying to be a grief recovery specialist. I just knew like what's going to help her is to process. And
Yeah.
she cried and she shared and I just listened and said, wow, it's just amazing when we're able to process, like we talked about undelivered communications. And sometimes it's the things that we wish we would have said. It's not always the things that are bad. Sometimes it's the good. And it's a beautiful thing, but it's so contrary to how we've been taught to handle our emotions in order to survive.
It's so
So
good. It's so good. I think, Vicky, you need to have like a group grief recovery. Maybe you do, don't you? Don't you have like groups or things like that too? Because I can see I have some girlfriends on here and stuff too, and I can just see us all being able and I'll tell you why. Um, one of the things that I think women, whether they're moms, they're in later life or whatever, is they're missing community. And I think 2020 really hurt
yeah,
us in that sense. And to be able, and yesterday, this past Monday, um, we had, we got the final like psychological full evaluation on my son who this summer was officially diagnosed with autism, but there's all these other layers there and IQ and just in his although we've lived with it and we've known it maybe in it was just very hard to process and just like Teresa's on here, well, at least my son is verbal and not really aggressive, you know what I mean? Like I compare like you said, so I really needed to hear that. But I was sitting here with the Lord and he gave me a scripture and I didn't want to do that next thing I had to do. And he said, you need to reach out to your community. I have a community of homeschool moms, and I just shared a little bit with them and said, I just need some prayers and love. And I'm so grateful that I had that because the
yeah,
Lord was able to minister through some other friends, but so many women do not have that. And men
yeah,
too. Men too. And I feel like that starting with grief recovery or tools like this, but particularly like this, allows us to understand ourselves and be able to sit and process the emotion, right? And be able to understand ourselves better. I think I'm going off on a rabbit trail of things you've already said, but I mean, those of you watching it, you don't need to raise your hand, but how many of you actually take time to stop? We all take, probably most of us take time with the Lord, but really stop and listen to our own feelings and understand where does that behavior come from? What's the root cause of that? And working with you in those relationships, don't you think like the graphs and different things that we do, it really like there's so many aha moments in
Yeah,
that, like, holy moly, this is why I do this. Right? So,
absolutely. And it gives so much self-compassion. I think it's so powerful to have compassion with ourselves and remember, like it's so easy what we do to ourselves, we do to our kids.
mhm,
It's something that's so easy. Well, so and so hurt my feelings. Well, they probably didn't mean it. Or it was probably, it's like, it's so easy. It comes out like we don't realize how much we minimize because our heart is to help them get through it.
mhm,
But it's also how we've learned to do that. It's so minimizing and it's confusing. That's why I love that the it's conflicting feelings. That word I think is a perfect word to describe how it feels, but you don't even realize, how how we do it. I remember we had moved from California to Texas 13 years ago. Wait, in 2013. So 11 years ago, whatever it was. But it was hard. It was a huge move. My husband had been wanting to move for 7 years. I didn't want to move. My family's there. My homeschool group was there. Our church was there where we met. Like, I did hair back then and I had clients since I was in high school, like since the 80s, right? It was brutal for me. And I used my tools of grief recovery actually I graphed my home. I graphed my life in California. I was able to get what I say emotionally complete. And what that does is it allows you to enter into your next season. That helped me so much to be able to come to Texas and really, give my heart here. It still was hard. And I
mm,
remember one day my dad had called me. I'd been here for like less than a week and I cried every day. Like I was emotional. I missed everything was new. We moved without a job. Dan just felt like the spirit is moving us. And he put out resumes. He's a teacher. And we were like, how hard could it be to get a job? But when you don't have the 512 area code, nobody called him back. And anyway, and I even said to God, really, God, after me not wanting to move, I finally got my heart right. You're not going to give us a job. We're going to move without a job. And it was like, yeah, I mean, it was the biggest step out on faith that I had ever experienced. And my family, especially my dad, was not happy. Like, who does that? Who moves without a job? He was not feeling this faith thing at all. But I remember that I had been here and the hardest part for me was leaving them. And my daughter was 8 and I'm now taking away their 8-year-old granddaughter. Like, and he's worried. Like, so one day my dad happened to call and I was super emotional and I was literally like, and so I was like, I'm okay. And so he hung up because he didn't know what to do with me. And I immediately got a call from his wife, my stepmom, who I love. And if you are coaching that we did, she's a Ruby. That's a whole nother thing of temperaments, but she's a strong, a make it happen. So literally my phone rang a couple seconds later and it was her. And she was like, I just talked to your dad and he said you're having a hard time. And she was like, you just need to be grateful for everything that you have. This is what you wanted. And immediately when she said that, I realized she's telling me how she processes. And I said, I am grateful. Like, do you think I'm not grateful? Like and she was like, no, I don't mean, and I didn't have to, explain all this to her, but it helped me realize, oh, she's loving me and she's trying to kind of help me process the way she processes. which I have a lot of that in me too. But I remember I started laughing and I was like, oh, yes. And I said, no, I'm so grateful. And I'm so grateful for you. And I miss you guys so much. And that's why I'm emotional today. And even just being able to say that out loud. And she was like, oh, honey, we miss you, and it was fine. But it was one of those moments of this is a perfect example of she wants to get in and tell me, be grateful, focus
Yeah.
on this, do these things. Those things are not intellectually bad,
Yeah.
but they're not emotionally helpful. It was more, and I was able to say, hey, I get that, but this is what I'm actually feeling. And I was missing them. I was like, it's really hard to be away from you guys. And, but I was so grateful that I knew that I was able to say, so I didn't hang up the phone like, oh, now I just made them feel bad because they're knowing that I'm here. It's
Mhm.
so hard, all the layers, then to feel bad. And then I'm a burden to them. And now it's like the layers, So what I love about this is you're cutting through the layers and you're just like,
Yeah.
no, this is the truth. This is my emotional truth right now. And that's all I'm responsible for. And it helps with those emotional boundaries to be able
Yeah.
to clarify. I hope
So
that.
good. So good. Yes, because you mentioned boundaries quite a bit too. I just want to comment on Lindsay's, I don't know if it's question or statement, but I hear you, Lindsay. She says, how much is grieving special needs diagnosis is related to the loss of future you dreamed of your child and your family? Oh, how do you process that? And
That's so
mm,
good.
you
Thank you
know,
so much, Lindsay. What a great question. And
mhm,
when you were sharing, Mary, I was actually thinking of, I wanted to share this. One of the tools that we have in grief recovery to help you connect to your emotional truth is to ask yourself this question and write what comes out in your heart. What do I wish could have been different, better, or more?
mm,
And another is releasing lost hopes, dreams, and expectations. And that's such a good question because that is most definitely releasing those expectations, your hopes and dreams for your child and what this is going to look like. And there is power in being able to connect to what that is for you. What are the things that like you said, the loss of the future you dreamed of for? What are those things? And be able to write those down. And you guys have a group that's close, that's tight, that, and maybe you could even share them, listen to the other person say, read, this is what I'm releasing these hopes, dreams, and expectations because being heard is part of the healing process. So that's a very big thing. It's something that we kind of do after we do the steps. We finish with an overarching releasing of those things. Very, very powerful.
mhm. Very good. Very good. Teresa, who was on here earlier, who's a wellness coach as well, she runs an online Facebook group called Serenity and Fun for Special Needs Family. And I don't know if Lindsay knows her, but that would be a good connection as well and stuff for you. So there's so much. There's so
Yeah,
many.
we
We
could
are
talk.
seeing.
And anybody you could also I'm going to put that's my website, freedomfromgrief.com. And on there, my Calendly link is on there. It says work with us or schedule, or I forget what it says, but you can go right in and we can chat. Like it's free. I'm so happy to chat and do, where you can ask specific questions and how can this work? Can this help this?
Mhm,
I'm happy to do that. My husband also does, and I know that Mary and I have talked about this. He works with special needs families.
mhm,
And we've also actually been talking about creating kind of a specific grief recovery process addressing exactly that for
mm,
families that go through that process
yeah,
of he's got a program, but also bringing in the grief recovery part of addressing the lost hopes, dreams, and expectations.
yeah, absolutely. I think this is the sign. You tell him.
Yes, I will. I definitely
Right.
will.
Well, thank you. Oh, good. Thank you, Vicki. Thank you to our coaches and all of you who've been joining us or watching this recording. Again, we gave you all the links to do that, or you can look it down in the description below. if you're watching this on YouTube. And every month we have a variety of wellness classes, and you can get plugged into Vicki's classes as well. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.